What if we upgraded the architecture on the system and deepened intimacy to ensure that a certain category of customer could literally drive into a station, authenticate, and drive out because we know he's good for the money?
Good morning, my name is Adai Kefe and you're listening to the Experience Pod. One of our offerings at the center is a podcast where we invite brilliant and innovative minds to talk about technology and trends in Nigeria. Our topic today is fueling the digital economy. Like they say, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. On this episode, we consider how much this idiom applies to our very own oil and gas downstream sector. We will learn how technology is changing this sector through the lens of Mr. Abayomi Awobokun, the CEO of Enyo Retail Supply Limited. So I'm welcoming you, Mr. Abayomi Awobokun. How is the oil and gas downstream? How is that changing? I know that you have said that the downstream oil sector makes 5 to 6 billion in revenue annually. We also know that likes of Mobil have invested its 60% stake to Mobil Oil Nigeria. So has Owando, 60% sometime in 2016. Mr. Femi Otodola has done the same thing, 75% direct and indirect shareholdings in Forte Oil. Obviously there are reasons, there are probably other reasons behind it, but why Enyo? Why have you decided to take that plunge? What are your inspirations around Enyo? I think our listeners also want to know, with regards to digital evolution, how you marrying that into oil and gas, as they say.
Okay, thank you. And I commend you for this beautiful center. It's certainly a nice experience to be at the Experience Center.
Great, thank you.
Just jumping straight into it. Indeed, in Nigeria, downstream is generating $5 to $6 billion in revenue, and that is everything from the sales of refined products to the importation of refined products. Nigeria is one of the largest markets for the industry in Africa. We only have 16 million cars compared to other countries, but we, in a sense, we consume a lot of fuel. We consume fuel not just for driving, we consume fuel also for domestic use. And so that's what's driving it up. Unfortunately, we do not refine adequately to meet our demands. And the narrative in the industry for many years has been around that. And so if you cast your mind back as far as you can, all you remember about the downstream is fuel shortages or hanky-panky by players.
Yeah. And
also regulators wielding the big stick. And so we just realized a couple of years ago that how is it possible that a $5 to $6 billion industry is only known for supply shortages, clamors for deregulation, clamors for margin increases, strikes by tanker drivers?
So all the negatives, really.
The narrative was just really bad. And we thought, well, before the industry dies completely, do we have a window to create a brand that seeks to introduce some positives into this story of the downstream? And that's really what Enyo is trying to do. And so we founded Enyo in 2017, and our goal was to be the most innovative distributor. And we put a caveat to that. We wanted that innovation to be technologically driven. And that's the vision of the company. And we started it from day one on a unique operating system. That software was ready before any station was developed.
Oh, wow.
That's how we actually started.
Okay.
And the software essentially does a few things for us. It supports our entire supply value chain. It also supports the operation of the point of sale and allows all the points of sale to operate autonomously, so they run like banks. We tested it on our first 5 sites in 2017. Some kinks, but the possibilities were huge. That technology essentially supported our growth to 40 stations in 2018. And we've essentially doubled that in 2019. We're closing the year with close to 85 stations. And we see that as an introduction of the brand, of the value of the brand to the market. Fortunately, the software company and the software is available to the whole industry, so other businesses have started to use it, other competitors. Nobody is using it like we are,
Okay.
because we're one of the developers working with the techies in the company. And so we always have...
Customize it to your own.
Correct. And the reason also is that others are using it as a software to support their business. For us, it's the foundation our business is built on.
I like that.
And so all the things that we like to do, we start from there. We don't do it manually and look for...
And then try and superimpose
Yeah.
all the stuff. Yeah.
And so that's the entry point. The question is, how is it possible that an industry generating $5 to $6 billion a year is perhaps one of the most outdated when it comes to the use of everyday technology? We're not even talking about rocket science stuff, and we're talking about everyday technology. I mean, in oil and gas in Nigeria, most businesses only use emails. Nobody is using mobile technology. Nobody is doing anything with payments. Nobody's doing anything with, AI. Nobody's tracking consumer buying patterns and all that. I'm very proud to tell you we are. We certainly are tracking a lot more than people know that we're tracking. We know to a reasonable extent the buying patterns of individual or unique customers that come. We know per hour.
Sold across.
Not more than that. Apart from how much sold across, we know per hour the demography of visitors. So we know when the motorbikes come the most. We know when the premium customers come the most. We've adapted our comms at the stations to the demography that visits the stations. So you don't go to our stations and see uniform comms. At different stations, in different areas, we know generally this. We call it the GDP of the area.
Sure.
So we know that. And we are doing more. We're collecting preferences when it comes to buying patterns. We're collecting even personal data where we're allowed to. And we're using that with permission to develop new products for customers, and we've just started. We see field retailing as the platform on which Enyo will build new products. We don't actually see field retailing as our product. We actually see it as the platform on which we will build new products in the retail space for customers. So I always say, I wouldn't be surprised if in 3-4 years' time, you don't see Enyo as just a fields retailer, but you see it as a lifestyle brand, because we've collaborated with other lifestyle brands. We've brought our data to the fore. We've used AI and machine language to develop algorithms. We understand customer patterns, customer interests, and we're able to support the retail aspirations of other retail brands. That's really where we're going. There's a lot of talk about divestments in the industry. If what you're doing is pure play fields retailing, then you'll divest. The margins are very little. They're squeezed every day. The value chain is choked. You have 3 or 4 bona fide mouths to feed. When you look at the margins available, you have to feed the transporters, feed the marketer, feed the dealer. And I think all those businesses only have 11 naira to share. And so what's happened is, for the big businesses who have scale, who were alive when scale mattered in this business, as the business changed and the margins shrunk and innovation became a requirement, they couldn't go. They divested. We are founding this business in an era where innovation is the only way with which the business can grow. And so we can't complain about the things others are complaining about. Those things existed when we started, and they would continue to worsen. The margins will continue shrinking. So you probably would never hear us say margins are shrinking, because for us, that's a standard in the downstream. And that's the way it is globally. Downstream businesses don't have huge margins. The only downstream businesses that have other anchors survive. And that's what Enyo is trying to achieve.
That's fantastic.
We build innovation in our company on 3 pillars. We believe that innovation needs data. And we say there's 2 types of data. There's static data and there's dynamic data. Static data is data you can read about because it's already happened, it's been collected, it's been archived and probably processed. Dynamic data is real-time data. You may have a sense for what the data is telling you, but it's so dynamic, you've got to be careful not to miss the message.
Sure.
And so we believe that innovation always starts with data. Data collection, data analysis. You must know what the challenges are, what the opportunity is, or have a sense that there's something here at least. The second thing is you must be willing to collaborate. So between yourselves and other organizations, you must both be seeking to make something easier or the outcomes better. And then the third thing is, as you guys collaborate, there must be a desire to transform, to change the value chain, to change the outcomes.
A mindset shift.
Correct. So we call it a transformational mindset. So for us, that is how we teach innovation. And in the business, in Enyo at the moment, we have applications called core systems. A core system is a technologically driven, previously manual process, now mobile driven or AI driven. So the team all have targets on core systems. Every team, every lead has a core system target for the year. And so they're always asking themselves when they get their reports or they're doing their jobs with their teams, how can we enable this end-to-end process, make it mobile enabled or web enabled, and just take it away from this table and put it somewhere in the cloud and everybody can access it, and that sort of thing. And that's really beginning to drive almost everything, from things that are very mundane, like identity management, like shift management at the stations. We have a core system that drives shift management, something that we've developed, and it's mobile enabled. We have a station profitability analysis, which we use to harvest stations, which is GPS. It works with Google Maps, and we have a GPS app, and it counts traffic. And we have algorithms and AI that tell us the percentage of cars that would enter a station, and depending on the area in the country, we apply a minimum purchase per customer into it, a customer value. And that pops out a P&L even before we get the station, and it also drives the rent. So when we negotiate with the landlord, we generally know what we want to pay for the station. Data is king. So those core systems are beginning to, some of them are very mature. STP is very mature. We have TAMS, time and attendance management, which is the identity management for the attendants. So we also use a few things to deploy attendants within their area of comfort. What I mean by that is, if you live in Lekki as an attendant or a station employee, and you work at any of our Lekki stations, depending on the issues we're having at that station, and those issues are driven by another core system called POSIP, which is Point of Sale Inspection Platform. We could deploy you to support that team using your leader proficiency. So if you are generally good with cash management and we're having shortages, you will just get a text to report somewhere else within your geography, because we don't want you to. And when you get to the station, you'll be told exactly why you were there and how long you were there for, and the time system, the time and attendance management system would accept you because we've programmed it to do so. So there are quite a few other interesting systems. Some are all over the place. I get the sense sometimes that the team is trying to achieve this, but we know it's not. And that's also the interesting about innovation is we're very comfortable experimenting.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we experiment and it's not working. We keep going.
We keep at it.
We keep at it. We know what we're trying to achieve, and we know that we're not there yet. But we keep asking ourselves, why haven't we arrived at the destination? And sometimes we find that it's just ahead of its time. There's nothing wrong with the reasoning. It's just ahead of its time.
My other question would be on automated refueling machines. Why are we adverse to it? How come Enyo hasn't looked into that space? Is that because of, I know you say you do a lot of trend analysis, type of people who are coming to your station. What's your thinking around it?
I think the future is looks very promising for some of those things on the cohort. Some of the things that we've always struggled with is we probably spend $1 million a year evacuating our cash. Makes absolutely no sense. And so we've always asked ourselves, how do we do better with that process? And the answer really is to go as cashless as possible. However, locally, there's an infrastructure deficit supporting payments. So I got a call yesterday at one of our major sites. I withhold the name of the bank, but all the ATMs all the POSs were down. It's just mundane. Collecting money after a service has been delivered should never be a problem.
True.
That one should work.
Yeah.
And so customers are irritated, understandably so.
Yeah.
We are dumbfounded, understandably so. And there's nobody able to give you a real answer. Some people blame the telco, some blame the aggregator, some blame the bank. It's a mess. And so we are in the final stages of piloting a solution that we hope will take away that bottleneck. And the way that we see it is, could we know you well enough to allow you buy fuel and pay whenever you like? For us, that's the real question. There were other ideas that we had. Should we change the architecture of the station and ensure that everybody goes to pay before they fill up? And I thought, I wouldn't like that. Should we change the architecture and ensure that you pay at the gate? Again, it doesn't make for easy entry and exit. But what if we upgraded the architecture and the system and deepened intimacy to ensure that a certain category of customer could literally drive into a station, authenticate, and drive out because we know it's good for the money? And what are we talking about? For individual passenger motor cars, we're talking about a full tank. If you drove an SUV, it's 12,000 naira. And if you travel the distance I travel, and I live in Lekki, you probably do that 4 times a month. So we're talking 50,000 naira. So the question is, are you worth 50,000 naira credit? You've just driven into the station with your Passat or your Toyota Corolla. Certainly. How do we make the most of that worth? How do we, and globally businesses run on credit. We're not afraid to give credit to the right people in exchange for ease. And certainly, depending on when they want to pay, they should be ready to pay for the credit too, and pay for the convenience. And so I think I can say here that we are in the final stages of piloting something like that. Our delay has been because there's some regulators, especially in the financial services industry, that have to be comfortable with the method that we are proposing that this is done. It'll be tied to BVN, tied to the credit bureau, and once you authenticate at the pump, you can serve yourself or be served. But what's important is that we want to deepen the ease with which you enter the forecourt, get the service, and leave. And so, in terms of automated fuel machines, that's the way we're thinking about it. There are other opportunities too for fleet management. Household fleet. You have 3 or 4 cars, you should be able to enjoy a similar service, even if you're not the one driving, without compromising security, without losing money, and also getting some assurance that what you were told was bought is exactly what was bought. So there's household fleet, then there's commercial fleet, businesses that have cars and also want some assurance in how those cars are fueled, and also want some warranties if there's any problem with the fuel. Where did you fuel exactly? What happened? That sort of thing. And how can we tie that all the way to car maintenance? Because at the end of the day, one of the drivers for maintenance is use, and fuel gives you data on use, because cars there's a relationship between fuel consumed and your odometer reading. So that's where we are. We're in the final stage of a pilot. We think it's going to be revolutionary. The market will receive it very well. And we also have enough data to know where to pilot first. A couple of years ago, one of the marketers had tried self-service in Lekki, and I was involved in that, and it failed. And the reason it failed was because we had assumed that we could roll out self-service without thinking about the other stakeholders, like the attendants. One of the things that we're doing now is we're not looking to lay off attendants, we're looking to retrain them for other things. And so all the key stakeholders involved in fuels retailing today are being thought about in this new, idea, in this new, so that's how we think about it. So I hope that we can come up with something shortly and then keep improving it.
That's fantastic. I believe what customers are looking for is more convenience. Obviously, trust too is the big thing for us here. And you've mentioned something about being able to drive into a station knowing that your fuel is also guaranteed and you can leave ASAP. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll track you on. Okay. So one other thing I wanted to mention is the on-demand delivery diesel service. How does that work? And how does that work vis-a-vis your bricks and mortar? And I know you do have a new, what do I call it? The lounge or it's called Relax.
Yes, we do.
Yes. So how?
Well,
it seems to be some conflict between.
No. It's actually not competitive.
propositions.
D2D is a very, very basic service. It's actually not something that we are pushing. It's a product the market asked for, which is essentially delivering quality fuels to the house. And it's online because for us, it's the sort of thing that should be self-service. We don't see any reason why we should staff it up much more than a support person or two. And I think it's doing well. It's in the areas where the stations are. Customers are confident that that brand will deliver when you order. We get a few thousand hits a day, with all the reversals and, it's just a manic platform, but it works. There's a payment gateway. We've had numerous issues with the payment gateway, different times. People have tried to hack into it, all sorts of things, but that works. We are expanding that end of September to include cooking gas. So what we've done is that we developed an app that allows you to order for cooking gas at home and we'll deliver to you, and the selling is free. So we're not selling the bottles, and all our bottles are brand new. And the bottles are tracked. We hope you only need the gas, so use what you need and leave the bottle. And when you're ready for it to be picked up, you get back on the app, we'll come and pick it up. We're creating more jobs for people.
Would you take back to your site or
yes.
you
So we'll take back to a site. We'll have different hubs close to different spokes. So depending on where you live, it could be a delivery man from a hub or the spoke that picked up from you. But if you're reordering, they'll come with another bottle.
Just
replace. And just swap. And all the bottles are ours. And I think the real value here is that we are of the school of thought that you don't need to buy a bottle to buy gas. A lot of people already own their bottles, that's fine. But we don't think that you automatically you don't need to buy a car to get to point A to B. All you need is to be transported. So all you need here is gas. And the board agrees with that, and we're making the investment. It also allows us to control quality of the bottles, control quality of the product, and also quantity. So that's what we're doing. So the D2D platform gets upgraded. Also, on that platform will be VCon, which is our vehicle maintenance. And one of the things that we are going to experiment is actually a car pickup. So if you order VCon and you're registered, we're happy and we have got insurance to get your car picked up from wherever it is you are, depending on what the car needs, and drop it back for you, or you can pick it up. And hopefully we will be able to sign on a car hire service, and we could give you a replacement car. But that's proving to be very difficult because a lot of the car hire services don't render that service. The way they render it is that the driver must drive you. And we thought it'd be nicer if, depending on the car you dropped off.
It should be optional.
Correct. Yes. Depending on the car you dropped off, we could give something similar. So we're not dropping off a Range Rover when you gave us a Toyota Corolla, or vice versa. If you drop a Corolla, get a Corolla, that sort of thing. So we're working on that. So all that we're calling a unified sales platform, and we've collected a lot of customer data. At the moment, nothing personal, but we've collected personal data, customer data from the stations. I think we have over 200,000, unique people on our database who we don't know by name, but we know their buying pattern.
Wow.
And what we're trying to do now is, with our loyalty program, get their permission to better, know who they are within the limits of their comfort. And then that allows us to render services to them with a higher level of intimacy. So if we know you patronized us 4 times a month for the last 1 year, honestly, we're very happy for you to pay when you're happy or when you get paid from work, from your fuel or your gas or your diesel at home.
Or you accumulate points and then swap it for something.
And so that's really where we're going with that. And hopefully, as we collect that data and we know you and we're extending credit to you, etc., we can say to your mobile operator, we know this person, you can trust us, and we can jointly give you a better bundle of services, or say to your food vendor, or say to your electricity vendor, whatever it is, because we know who you are. So that's really where we're going with those platforms. Yeah,
that's fantastic. We will continue to track progress And I think you're definitely on the right track. So speaking about predictions, what would you say, what was the last prediction you got wrong? It doesn't have to be.
No, it's interesting, and we talk about this all the time. The last prediction we got very wrong was that the government would regulate downstream fuels prices. We got that very wrong because that's not been deregulated, and we based that on the premise that the country could ill afford to continue to subsidize. It still cannot. We thought that the governors will push back. They did. We thought that the federal government will succumb. It did not. And we thought that Nigerians would see that the funds or the resources expended on the downstream over the years had been largely injurious to the development of the country. And I suspect Nigerians recognize that, but it hasn't changed anything. So that prediction, and we modeled our business in a certain manner because of that prediction. And that we self-fat on our faces on that one. So my hands are up on that one. Yes, we got that one wrong.
Fair enough. What's one view you seem to find very few people agree on?
Well, one view that I find a lot of people disagree on is that we will be a first world country in our lifetime. I find that a lot of people don't appreciate the length of time it takes to develop a society or community, and they base a lot of their expectations on illogical assumptions. And so my conclusion is that we will see flashes of improvement in different quantities to different degrees right across the economy and the society. But I'm 40 years old, I'm 41 in a few days.
7 days.
I doubt that in 40 years' time that we will be as developed as we can even articulate today. That we would have a functioning transport system across the country, we would have a blanket of electricity across the country, we would have subways and functioning waterways, and all that would work like it works in a lot of countries we holiday in. I doubt it. I think what we would see is we would see progress in snatches and glimpses in different parts of the country, and we would still see huge inequality, and we would still be as aspirational as we are today. But if we were all alive and we kept our records properly, we would know that yes, this development is a lot tougher than we assumed it would be.
So Alaska, our chief economist in PwC, says he would like to know more about ventures beyond Lagos environment. Can you share with us what Enyo is currently doing in that regard, and what does the downstream market look like in those environments other than Lagos?
We're fortunate. We are in 17 states. So we're in Lagos, we are in Ogun, Oyo State, we're now in Ondo State, we are in Kogi, we are in Anambra, we're in Enugu, we are in Port Harcourt, we're in Abuja, Kano, Kaduna, we're in Calabar as well, just opened Calabar. We are really a national brand. And what that has done for us is we are collecting data right across. And it's very interesting buying patterns. So I'll give you a good example. I could almost tell you to a degree of accuracy when the rains are bad in the east, because you would see that for a few hours in a day there's almost no sale. And so I would look at it and say, provided the equipment is up, and I can tell from my system that equipment was up and when the station opened, and I can also ping the equipment real time, and I can tell you to a level of accuracy when the equipment went down. If there was no sale, and all of a sudden the sale picked up later in the day, that there was a condition that affected everybody. So it's either the road was shut or there was weather induced, that sort of thing. And we see the weather patterns affect the stations in different parts of the country differently. In Lagos, if there's really heavy rain, you get a 30% drop, but you will get sales. In the East, you won't. In the East, generally, your sales will drop to about 80-90%. Yes, they're actually a lot more sensitive to heavy rain than Lagosians are, for example. Also, we have different systems tracking the sales of our competitors. So we track, every station has 3 competitor groups. One is NNPC and a group of its own. Second is a major, Total, OVH, Mobile, etc. And the other is an independent. So PC1, PC2, PC3. And we are also able to a large extent to track their own traffic. And we see that some of these disruptions, whether weather or ceremony or festival, affect us all. We only know how much it affects us, but we know it affects everybody else. And so we see that in the downstream across the country, it's not a homogeneous market. There are trends, there are behaviors in different parts of the country that are not consistent. So during fasting, for example, during the Muslim fasting, we see a different behavior in the north. We see a trend in the south that's similar, but it's not as acute. In the south, especially in Lagos and Ogun, the churches affect, they affect sales. One on Sundays, then also once a month and once every quarter, the big churches, the Redeemed and Co, throw the numbers all over the place. It's always very interesting to see how behavior changes. As we're growing our cooking gas, we're also seeing interesting data, cooking patterns. We used to say that a family of 4 or 6 will consume a 12.5 kg bottle of gas once every 6 weeks. Well, other things affect it too. The age of the family generally, and also the season, and also, interestingly, the ethnicity. So we find that some ethnic groups cook a lot, some do not. So a family of 6 in Lekki would go through their 12.5 actually in 2 months, averagely, and on the mainland in 3 weeks because they're boiling their water. You understand? So some of that data
is so amazing.
So we're still trying to better understand how to collect that data without any biases.
And then mine it, obviously, for your own purpose.
So
that's
some of the
amazing.
things,
That's amazing. I'm sure Andrew will be happy to hear that. So I'm turning tables now, and like I say, disruption is interrelated. So what's one perspective you would like to get from our next guest?
Well, I think for me, I'm going to stay consistent with the topic, and I hope he or she can tell us how their business or whatever they're involved in is thinking about changes, whether induced by them or induced by the market, coming into their space, and how they're using mobile technology, cloud computing, machine language, artificial intelligence to ensure the outcomes are positive, not just for their business, but for their industry. I think I'll be interested to know how other people in other industries, how they're thinking about those changes and how they are preparing themselves for those inevitable changes in their industry. I think I'd like to know that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Yomi.
Thank you so much for listening.